On this week's episode of the 262 Fishing Friday Forum, we're talking about drilling holes in the ice. Before we get into this week's video, I of course want to wish each and every one of you a very happy new year. I know 2020 has been rough on all of us, and let's face it, turning the page to 2021 doesn't really get rid of all of our problems, but it does give us new hope for the future. So here's wishing you the best 2021 and reminding you that this Tuesday I'll be looking back on my year 2020 as far as fishing goes. So make sure you're subscribed, so if you haven't seen the past year of my channel, you can catch up this Tuesday in sort of a top moments compilation that I'll be doing. There'll be some funny moments, there'll be some serious moments, and of course some great fish catches as well. So stay tuned for that episode this upcoming Tuesday at 2 o'clock. This week's topic is talking about how to use a hand auger. And I know this is probably very basic for a lot of you. If you've ever been ice fishing, you've had to have drilled a hole, and usually the first way anybody ever does it is with one of those old school hand crank augers. I know a lot of you have probably upgraded to gas or electric augers, and we can talk about all of those in the future. But I want this video to be the very basics, the very beginner, because I know some of you have told me that this year is your first year ice fishing, and I want you to know the basics of how to use a basic hand crank auger. And let's face it, I know I said it's kind of old school, but I've been ice fishing for a while. I know a lot of people have been ice fishing a lot longer than I have, and they still use a hand crank auger because it's reliable and it gets the job done. So I want to give you guys a couple of basics about how to use a hand crank auger and a couple tips that'll kind of make it a little bit easier for you so that you don't get quite as tired, because let's face it, drilling a lot of holes can get tired if you're doing it by hand. So here's a few suggestions I've found over the years that have helped me using a hand auger. Alright, first and foremost, if you don't have an auger yet and you're looking to buy your first one, find the narrowest diameter that you think you can get away with. They can range anywhere from 4 to 6, 8 inches. I think there's some even bigger augers. I'm sure there are somewhere. But get the smallest diameter possible that you think that you can get away with. I think it's a 6-inch auger, and I've had no problem pulling decent pike out of there. And of course, I use it for panfish as well. But the reason you want a smaller diameter auger is because it's actually easier to drill. It's because there's less surface area of the ice resisting against the blade as you're drilling. Think of it like this. If you're driving down the road and you stick your hand out the window, if you've got your whole hand, there's a whole lot of wind resistance fighting your hand. As opposed to if you're just holding maybe one finger out, there's less wind resistance holding your hand. It's easier for you to hold your hand forward. And the same is true for an auger. A smaller diameter auger is going to have a smaller blade, so there's less surface area causing that resistance, therefore making it easier to drill. Now the flip side of this is you still want to have a hole big enough to get some of your fish out. If you only have a 4-inch auger, this is great for panfish, but you might have trouble getting some of these bigger fish out. So figure out what you want to use. Again, 6 inches works for me. Some people like bigger ones. But you also have to consider the equipment that you have. If you already have tip-ups, if you have hole covers, you got to know those sizes as well. I have heard stories of holes being drilled so big that the tip-up won't even sit on the ice and it just falls right in because the hole's bigger than the tip-up. So find a good balance for what works for you, what your plan is for ice fishing, and get the appropriate auger size. So that's assuming you don't have an auger and you'll be buying one, and anytime you buy an auger, those blades already come sharpened. But if you buy a used auger, or you inherited one, or you found one laying around that is never used, the first thing you should do is make sure the blades are sharpened. Now, I don't recommend running your hand across the blade, although a brand new sharpened blade probably won't cut you if you're being careful, but sharp objects and I don't always get along, especially these days. So your best recommendation there is just to take your blades in to your local bait and tackle shop and get them sharpened. Most local tackle shops will sharpen blades. They'll do most of them. There are different types of blades, and some shops do some blades but not others, so make sure you call ahead, find out if they'll actually do those blades. You can also, depending on the type of blade, sharpen it yourself, but this is going to depend on the bevel, and the bevel is that angle that the blade actually comes down to a point, and some of them actually have a curved bevel, which is harder to sharpen. You're probably not going to be able to sharpen it by hand, but if you have a sharpening stone or something along those lines and you see that it comes to a point at a straight edge, it's a straight bevel, you might be able to sharpen that on your own. If you're new to sharpening or you're new to blades and you just want to get started and make it easy, take it to a bait shop. They'll be able to take care of it for you. And if they can't sharpen them, they'll point you in the right direction for where to buy new blades, because blades can be taken off and replaced, and obviously taken off to be sharpened. And obviously a brand new set of blades is going to be absolutely razor sharp. Alright, so you've got your auger, your blades are nice and sharp, and so now you want to go out to the ice and actually start drilling holes. Well, here's a few suggestions that I found. First and foremost, this is the very basics, very simple, but as you're holding your auger in the ice and you're looking down, you want to turn it so that as you look down on it, you're turning it clockwise. Every single hand auger I've ever seen, you turn clockwise as you're looking down on it. And this seems pretty simple, right? But if you do it counterclockwise, you're going to learn real quick. Those blades aren't digging in because they're just skimming along. They're not biting into anything because there's no edge there. So make sure you're turning it clockwise. Now, which hand should be on top supporting it and which hand should actually be doing the cranking? It really doesn't matter. I'm right-handed. Sometimes I like cranking with my right hand, but let's face it, after a couple holes, you get tired, you're going to switch and crank with your other hand too. So just try it out, figure out which one feels comfortable for you. But this hand on top is going to do more than just supporting it. You will be applying some weight down. Now, some augers will have it where you can actually unscrew the shank from the corkscrew part. I'm sure there's a technical term for that, but I can't think of it right now. But you can actually adjust the height of the actual handle in relation to the blades and the screw. So go out to the ice, find out what level is comfortable for you, but here's a couple things to keep in mind. This top hand is doing more than just supporting. It also will be providing some downward force because you got to be able to bite into the ice to shave it off. Now, how much downward force do you need? This is something you're going to have to play around with, something you're going to have to balance. The analogy I like to use is think about shoveling snow, something we have a lot of experience here in Waukesha County for, especially after getting anywhere from 4 to 8 inches earlier this week. But if you're shoveling snow, you know that, let's say there's 6 inches of snow, and you try and scoop and shovel that full 6 inches, a full shovel's worth. That's super heavy, and you may or may not be able to lift it up depending on how heavy the snow is. But if you skim off that first 2 inches, throw it out, skim off another 2 inches, throw it out, and then work your way to the bottom, it makes life a lot easier. And the same concept is true for how much weight you should apply and how much pressure you should apply downward onto the ice through your auger. You're going to have to find a balance because not enough pressure while you're pushing down, and it's just going to take forever, and it's barely going to take any ice off that top layer. But if you're pushing down too hard, it's going to try and bite into too much ice, and you're just going to get stuck. So find a nice little balance for how much weight to push down. You'll play around with it and you'll figure it out what works for you. But know that you shouldn't be just like leaning down and putting all your weight into it. But you do have to apply some downward pressure as well. Alright, so you're going down, you're drilling, and you're almost to the bottom, and all of a sudden it just stops. If you've never experienced it before, it might be kind of frustrating, like, man, I thought I was drilling through the ice and now it's even thicker ice. Actually, if you all of a sudden feel it stop just like that and it's catching, you're there, you're through. What's happening is the blades, when it's at the narrowest radius in the middle, that is actually making it through all the ice. You've made it all the way through, and now the outside, because the blades are angled a little bit, the outside hasn't quite made it through, but it's just a very thin layer of ice. When you get to that point, just slam your auger down because that'll break through that thin little layer that's left, and then pull it back up, and you've drilled yourself a hole. Alright, so those are the very basics for how to drill a hole in the ice using a hand auger. Again, Pay attention to your radius, make sure you've got sharp blades, and then find the right amount of pressure that works for you to get an efficient drill going. If you have any other suggestions for how you use a hand auger to drill through the ice, comment down below. Let me know a couple of tips that you might have, because like I always say, we all learn better when we learn together, and I want to promote that conversation in the community so some other new ice fishermen can maybe see your comment and take your suggestion and maybe something that I never thought of. So comment down below. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe right here to 262 Fishing. Push the red one down below. I do videos every Friday at 9 a.m. I call it the 262 Fishing Friday Forum, where I release vlog style videos just like this, where I spark conversation in the comments section. And then of course Tuesdays at 2 o'clock, I call them 262 Tuesdays, where lately I've been releasing ice reports. This upcoming Tuesday will be 2020 in review, and hopefully after this Tuesday I'll finally be back to fishing and getting some fishing episodes out there now that we've got good and solid ice. So again, subscribe, push the red one down below, and don't miss a thing. If you are new to the channel and you haven't subscribed already and I haven't convinced you yet, I am on a mission to catch a fish in every lake here in Waukesha County. So if you're local to the county and you've got a lake you want to suggest, comment down below. If that's something that's interesting to you, of course, subscribe as well. But either way, again, I hope you guys have a great New Year's Eve. Be safe out there. I hope 2021 is better than 2020. Let's face it, it can't get much worse, right? But as long as we can still go fishing, it really doesn't matter, because like I always say, it doesn't matter if you go around the world or go around the corner, just as long as you go fishing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the ice.